Okay. Yeah, recording your progress. Okay. Um, okay, Linda. Well, I will start off by saying hello and welcome to Everything Foster Care with myself, Jason Cottrell, and my guest, Linda Fisk, who is from America. Can you tell me which state you're in America, Linda?
Yes, I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. So that's an iconic place for us here in England because of all the TV stuff that we get that comes from there over the
Yes,
years, you know. And you've got to be of a certain age to remember the program itself called Dallas, you know, which is
that's right. That's right.
yeah, fantastic. So we just before we started recording, we were talking about uh, you being adopted, and that's where we started the conversation. But it'd be lovely to find out. We'll come back to that, I think, and it'd be lovely to find out a little bit about your journey, your kind of education, and moving on to the business you presently have at the moment, and why you have that particular business. I'm really interested in that.
Thank you. So, um, my journey in a very short, succinct sort of description has been always helping businesses grow and scale through sales and marketing. I have led sales and marketing teams for major media corporations like Scripps Networks, Belo, Freedom, all kinds of media companies all around the United States. And my role was to grow those media companies through sales and marketing initiatives. So I served as the chief marketing officer for several different media corporations, really large media corporations
Right.
like Discovery Channel, Scripps Networks, etc. And then at a certain juncture in my career, I transcended just sales and marketing into leading the company beyond a sales and marketing sort of area focus to leading the company entirely. So I was the CEO of an organization called Collective 54. I served as the CEO of a couple other pretty sizable organizations, and then ultimately decided that I wanted to create an organization really focused on helping accelerate the success of women in positions of leadership all over the world. So my focus is to help amplify and accelerate the leadership journey of women in positions of influence, whether that is their own entrepreneurial journey or they are hired into a CEO position of a nonprofit or for-profit anywhere in the world. So we have 10,000 members that are part of Leadership Global now. In Africa, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, South America, North America. But the one
Huge.
uniting factor of all these women is that one, they have ascended to a position of leadership within their respective organizations, and they are all committed to deeply investing in the success of other women. So this is a community that really does pay it forward and that has been fully committed to ensuring that women have access to the resources, the tools, the connections, the access to funding and media opportunities that will help them actually accelerate their success.
That's amazing, and it is an amazing thing because the world of business has always been largely male dominated, isn't it? And that, you know, I think the zeitgeist is that has to change, you know, not just from business, but from politics as well as management. And, you know, certainly the what we're seeing here in our politics is a lot of women actually taking a lot more leadership roles than in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And that is great to see. But on a personal level, uh, it's I'm going to share it with you. I grew up. It's strange, but in an old people's home, part three accommodation we used to call it, because my mother was a matron, and we lived in this place. So I spent a lot of time around nurses and women, uh, and my brother and my sister as well. And then I went to boarding school, and I trained as a nurse. So predominantly a female environment that I've grown up throughout my entire life. And I became a nurse and then left to look after my mother. and and had carers around who were predominantly female. So I've had a predominantly female life in a weird way. Um, and I've come across some women that have just been so incredibly strong, especially when I moved into end of life care myself recently. And, we had a team that was led by one particular lady called Becky Ricks. And her approach to a team was a compassionate approach. And it was amazing because she was there for every member of that team. I was the only male member, but there was a team of about 20 of us, and we used to go into people's houses in the morning and get them up and dressed, and then in the evening and put them to bed. And it was the last 4 weeks of their lives. And the teams before she came along were fairly dysfunctional, but she had this thing where she drew everybody together by being there for them and their families. And it was a very maternal, nurturing team. And I've got to say, the best team that I've ever worked in. And I've worked in quite a few. Now we're doing fostering, interestingly. That's led by a lady called Elle. Alan and, I forgot my surname. I'm going to get shot. So by Elle, and she started this fostering company. And I'm struggling because I'm wondering how many other foster companies, because they're independent foster companies, we have they're called independent, fostering services, are run just by women. I mean, how is that in your country, in Dallas? I mean, is it a predominantly female-led experience?
Well, I will tell you that although I don't have the statistics specifically to fostering organizations, as you and I discussed, I have a personal story of being adopted from an orphanage, early in my life, and being raised by two parents that were not biologically related to me, but they definitely invested the time, the resources, the care, the love to bring me up, and I'm incredibly grateful to them. In terms of, back then, the orphanages and foster organizations, I guarantee, were primarily led by men. I will tell you that right now, despite making up 50% of the US population and 58% of the civil labor force, women are staggeringly absent from upper level positions in the American workforce. And while there is a long history of women's role in the American workforce between wars, social movements, political climates, very little progress has been made in the way of gender equality in the workplace. So, we believe that there's still a lot of room for development and growth. Women only make up 23% of any C-suite aspect of an organization, either a for-profit or nonprofit business. The C-suite leadership group, only 23% of that C-suite leadership group are made up of women. And women of color make up just 4% of C-suites. And so my belief is that we have a lot of work to do to ensure that women are available to move into those positions of leadership, that they're seen, they're heard, they're recognized, they're valued, and especially women of color. In fact, only 3% of Fortune 500 companies have at least one Hispanic or Latina member on their board of directors. So in my mind, again, there's still a lot of work to be done. But I do think that there are some ways that we can all work together to break down barriers. So, that's really what I focus on, is what can we do to accelerate the success of women in either a corporate setting or as an entrepreneur, where they are creating their own organization, either for-profit or nonprofit. How can we support those women in ensuring that they are able to grow and scale their business and create meaningful impact?
It's crazy, isn't it? Because coming from a primarily female-led world, if you like, uh, a lot of the managers, especially in nursing, were male, and they would
Yeah.
run a ward, or they would run actually the ladies would run the ward, and the men would run the hospital, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, and every time I've seen, and this is in nursing, every time I've seen women put in more powers of authority, I think, just as a guess, 90% of the time, it lifts the whole efficiency. Okay, because I think that there's, men are very target led, and that in our country we have, this we have the NHS system, but they have targets that they have to meet, and there's more time spent chasing targets than actually looking after patients. And
Yeah.
there's a big thing in that. Well, I was speaking to a guy called Sir John Timpson, and he was saying even in the fostering service, what we're seeing is 80% of social workers' times, who are largely also female, having to chase targets and spending that time away from families, not actually dealing with the families. So I think there's a kind of maternal hands-on feel that goes along with efficiency when you put women in charge. Is that something that you see? Do you see when somebody gets into a company in a position of authority that it helps to change that company, or is that just a bit of a myth?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you mentioned something that I want to really focus on for a moment, and that is the bias, either the conscious or unconscious bias of both men and women to hire men over women. Get this, both male and female managers that were recently surveyed in a nationwide corporate survey that reached over 10,000 different businesses indicated that both male and female managers are twice as likely to hire men over women. Women
Why is
are
that?
25 to 46% more likely to be hired through blind applications. So if in the application there is no identification of gender, and even to the place where maybe the first name is blanked out, the gender is not included in the application, then women are 25 to 46% more likely to be hired. And it's funny because 40% of people in the workforce today, whether you are at a Fortune 500 company or a small mom and pop entrepreneurial startup,
Yeah.
40% of people do notice a double standard against female candidates. And at companies where 90% of leadership is men, half of the men in the company view women, ironically, as being well represented, as though 10% of leadership by women is enough. So even
So
in
that's a box
companies,
ticked almost. That's crazy, isn't it?
it is where 90% of the leadership roles are held by men. Half of the men at that company say, oh no, women are well represented. They're well represented at our company. So we have to get to a place where we notice the double standard and where women are given an equal opportunity to be hired into positions of leadership. And often that means blind interviews, right? Where you're looking at resumes without gender being identified and without names necessarily being identified either.
Is that something you think that could ever be adopted into law? Because that seems like so sensible that gender shouldn't actually be put down, or I can never say it's ethnicity, ethnicity, because it should really be going on achievement, past and present, shouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And there are places where we're seeing a lot of progress being made around the world with, now legislation is indicating that a certain number of board seats have to be allocated to women. That's true in several places around the world. So we are seeing some legislation and some mandates. that allow women to have an equal opportunity to be in positions of leadership. And I will tell you that since the pandemic, I think the challenges that women face have been identified. So women, especially women of color, are more likely to be laid off, more likely to be furloughed, more likely to stall in their careers, which of course jeopardizes their financial security. So what we're really focused on in Leadership Global is trying to ensure that women have equal access to funding, to privileges and benefits and opportunities that are usually reserved for men, and not at the detriment of men at all, but at least given equal opportunity for men. So that's really what I think is incredibly important right now. But when you think of, this is something else you touched on that I think is so brilliant. When you think about the most important qualities of a good leader, it's really about establishing a unique leadership style based on your own values, character traits, and talents. And I think women specifically serve with both their mind and their heart. They incorporate an attitude of service, and they try to genuinely connect with the people that they are in service to or that report to them. And I think most women do try to be generous and participate, share their knowledge generously with those that they lead, being a role model to inspire and motivate people forward. In fact, women have been proven to hold a pretty key advantage in soft skills, where you often hear the term like emotional intelligence. In fact, a study by a global consulting firm called Hay Group found that women outperform men in 11 of 12 key emotional intelligence competencies. Yeah. In fact, the Hay Group found
that's
that.
quite remarkable, isn't it?
Yes, and that's exactly what you were talking about, and you're so right on. Women leaders tend to slightly outperform men in most leadership skills that are considered to be soft skills. So emotional intelligence or any ability pertaining to the way you approach others and handle your professional life. So some of the qualities and characteristics where women have an advantage, according to the Hay Group, is having authentic communication and leadership style, navigating through discomfort and the imposter syndrome, giving and receiving actionable feedback, setting and reasserting boundaries, negotiating on behalf of themselves and their team, and also developing teams and developing champions. So those are some of the things that women do exceptionally well, partly because they think how we've been socialized. But I think it all comes down to the traits of empathy, humility, and self-knowledge. Those are keys to excelling in leadership, and they absolutely are the keys to overperforming in a crisis situation, and women tend to do that very, very well.
It's interesting. I had to give a talk, a sort of inspirational talk to a group of business leaders coming up shortly. And it's based on compassionate. Colchester City has been awarded compassionate city status. And there's a thing we're called a compassionate business community that meet up and try to learn from each other and support each other. And I'm supposed to give them a chat. And the interesting thing is that I think about 80% of business leaders are women. They're attracted almost to the word compassion and compassionate approach. And we'll be talking about listening skills and hear, see, feel, which it's coming back to what you were saying. It is really about that, it's not touchy-feely approach, because that's dismissive, but the real paying attention to workers. John Simpson, as I said, John Simpson does a thing called upside down management, where he doesn't call his workers, they're colleagues. And the area managers that go round to see the colleagues are not managers. They're more like social workers, because they're there to say, well, you're doing this job. How can we help you to do it better and more brilliantly? And then, they'll also help out their families. It's a much more rounded approach. And I won't tell you what his net worth is, but it's quite a lot. So he's very successful, this company, over the years. And it's based very much on that compassionate family feel to a business, being really inclusive. And that seems to be what you're reflecting is really needed in business in general, I would say. So it's going to be really, it's going to be really handy having this interview. I would say, oh, by the way, I've got this lovely friend called Linda Fisk, and she
Oh,
can tell
that's so
you.
kind of you. I will tell you, you've nailed it. I mean, your area of inquiry, I think, is just brilliant, but your insights are so dead on. I think female leaders do express more awareness of fears that their team members might be feeling. They have generally more concern for the well-being of their teams and also confidence in the plans that are presented by their teams. So I will tell you that what feels common to most women and what was also considered to be a detriment to their leadership is now, I think, being recognized as a strength. So things like being able to network, collaborating with others, communicating authentically, both orally and in writing, and critical thinking. Those are all aspects of leadership that I think, in prior generations might have been seen as a weakness. But now I think there's this idea that advancing your skills in those areas can actually make you more competitive. Being able to cultivate executive presence, polishing your presentation skills, calling people to take action, all of those things are fundamental regardless of your gender. But some of the, I think, qualities and characteristics that are very natural and common to women in prior generations, although they were often suggested as weaknesses, now I think that there's this sense that no, in fact, those are some of the most important aspects of leadership. Because, impactful leadership is about making long lasting, positive, and meaningful contributions to the organizations and the communities that you serve. Really, what that means is you're making a positive contribution in the lives of people around you. And to do that, you do have to combine both your mind and your heart to lead and to achieve sustainable goals and build lasting impact.
Listen, Linda, I'm conscious that we've got about 30 seconds to go on the Zoom meeting, so I don't want it to cut out. Have you got a website people can go to specifically or to find out more about your whole leadership approach?
Absolutely. So you are welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am Linda Fisk, or you're welcome to reach out to Lead Her Ship Global. So it's
I love
Leadership
that.
Global with an H. So
Yeah.
Lead Her Ship Global through email, through LinkedIn, through any of the social media platforms that you may prefer.
I shall certainly, when I do the business talk, I shall certainly put that forward. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can get back in contact and get some more information about this and talk about the whole subject. So a little bit more,
Jason,
especially
you've
from
been
Boston.
amazing, and I'm so honored to be a part of your program. You are one of the most engaging hosts that I've ever had the good fortune of
Oh,
listening to and now participating in your podcast. You're engaging, you're memorable, you're also incredibly insightful, and I am very, very grateful to be invited to be a part of the platform.
thank you, Linda. Get me there. Thank you very much, Linda Fisk from Lead Her Ship Global. That's very cool. Thanks very much,
Thank
Linda.
you.